We start going out there, but we are hopefully streaming live. I'll know in a second.
See if you can see it.
But this is always part of how we get started, is to make sure we are broadcasting. Yep, here we are now. So Southern Porches is live. So as I get this starting to share out a little bit, I know one thing that it was interesting yesterday in class, of course, was what happened out in Las Vegas. People do ask, how do you process something like that? That's a tough question to answer because we all process life differently through the way that we have been raised and our backgrounds and the filters that we have. So what would you say to somebody? How do you process what's going on and the news that's going on, but more specifically Vegas and the tragedy out there?
Well, the one thing that concerns me is over emotional possession of an issue. I think that there is an appropriate response of concern or anger or frustration or sadness, and there's an inappropriate, and there I think is an incredible dividing line right now. I think when I see some people that are over responding and acting worse than the people who were actually at the event. And then there's people that are on the other side who don't care at all, and those kind of areas concern me. And then there's people in the middle who have what I would say is an appropriate response. Is I wasn't there, I didn't know anybody directly, nobody I'm directly connected to, but as far as humanity, I'm concerned about what's happened, and so I have what would be considered an appropriate emotional response to that. So I think there's kind of the check-in piece of that for people. How am I responding? And is it appropriate? And I think some people are just out of bounds. And I can see how that can easily happen with the news cycles we have now. I mean, it's just horrendous. You could not turn on any news organization from any channel, whether it was TV or radio or internet, that wasn't just inundating you and showing you every different spot. And I was looking today and noticed that they were showing signs of the police investigating the room in the dark and the shadow and talking about that. And I thought, wow, it's a lot for the average person to process.
And again, I heard what you said also about sometimes the desensitization to what's going on and trying to wrap your head around the reality of what happened. But then it does become so much all-consuming. Are we becoming desensitized to this type of tragedy today?
Well, and a part of that, Rick, is I think you're as good as the crowd you run with. I think if you're with oversensitive people, a lot of times the response is, I've got to back off because I've got to pay my bills, I've got to cook my food, I've got to raise my kids, I've got to live my life, and if I absorb all this stuff, it's too much. I'm going to break down. So I see some of it from the crowd they run with, but I see when you're around a healthy crowd, one of the things you get, number one, is a listening ear. Am I around people that are not patronizing me, but listening to me?
Yeah.
And where I'm able to be vulnerable with. And I think when people do that, I don't notice that they don't care. I think that they care in a reasonable, healthy way, and they make a difference in their own lives and the lives of others.
And again, if you go back, what you just said, it goes down to the healthy relationships. If you have people in your life who, when these type of things happen, you can process with, but again, we're talking about people that are in that kind of relationship with you that you feel safe and not vulnerable.
Yeah, and you can't do that just offhand. Well, I want people to understand me. I want people to be connected. I want to be around healthy people today. Well, whoa, it just doesn't happen that way, Rick. I think it's you have to have cultivated that. And so I think that's one of the things that's really encouraging me a lot is I see more and more people very purposeful about their relationships, very purposeful about how they develop a relationship, and that they choose people, they cultivate people, and then when stuff happens, which it always will, they're ready for it. But when people are very haphazard, they're living off the cuff, they're living day by day, eat, drink, and be merry, everything, and then all of a sudden stuff happens, and they're like, I need somebody. They tend to pick, drama kings and drama queens.
Yeah.
And they just increase the issue. They do not calm the issue.
Yeah. Kim's joined us and he says, why do we seek an answer why in a world of chaos? We'll never know. Do you think that guy ever imagined at 30 or 40 that he would do what he did? And of course, we can't get into the mind of that. But I know as human beings, that is our natural nature. We want to know answers. We want to try to make sense out of chaos. That's what religion is all about. Religion came about because man wanted to figure out some way to make sense out of chaos, because we've always been a chaotic world. We always will be a chaotic world. There's a chaotic world right now. But I think the nature of man, for both the sensibility of man and also just the natural inquisitiveness of man, is we are seeking the why question. Well, and Kim's right. Will we ever get the answer? No. You can read a dozen books on evil in this world, and it boils down to all different aspects of satanic power, to free will, to lack of morality, and so forth. And he knew what this guy at 30 or 40 thought. The other part is the motivation.
Well, and here's a very important issue, and that is mental illness. It is not possible. This is an illusion that people have had for a long time. Is someplace we're going to understand the mind of the insane person, the incurable mentally ill, and the answer is no, you will not. No, and I think people certainly have found a way to make money in the seeking, but when you get down to it, they don't find. And there is the misstep of the why question, is that it's a circular question without an answer. It does not seek an answer. It will not give you an answer. It puts you on a questioning cycle that is circular, that you'll just go round and round. Why? And I think that is a primitive, poor coping skill, is to ask why. What people are really trying to do is, how do I cope with this? And they're not asking that question. They're more asking, why did this happen? And the real answer is, don't know. How do I know the mind of somebody deeply mentally ill? And the answer is no one knows.
Right, and that's the skill set. You're right. That's the skill set that can be learned. And then again, that's what Tim's saying. Again, he has a really good comment. Should we attempt to help others to be more introspective, or just, be like you said, just live and do as we feel? But once again, the why is we're never going to really break ourselves away from wanting to know the whys of the chaos of the world. Right. Will we ever have all the answers? No. Will we have any of the answers? Very few, I'm sure. But the introspectiveness and the ability to do, as you're saying, is maybe pull ourselves away sometimes from too much connection to the chaos is what's going to create. Out in Nashville, a lot of the sessions this week were based on brain health and, what we're doing to the brain and what's, we already know that if we're learning more about the MRIs and Dr. Nin and some of the discussions that were set out there, we are in I think, a state of crisis almost to what we are doing to the brain by constant 7/24 news, which news is only bad news or it wouldn't make the news.
Well, the great thing about news today is it's a product, right? And it's a product to sell. And if you put a product out there and it doesn't sell, you don't put it out anymore. That's just marketing.
Yeah.
But if you put a product out and it sells, well, you repeat that product. And that's what the news has done. They found products that work, tragedy, insanity, things that people can't understand but ask why, like we're talking about. That sells. It's kind of the old days what the phrase was, that's what sells papers.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember my father, who was a newsman, saying, never make a mistake on a slow news day. Because if you do, you're going to be on the front page. But if you make a mistake on a fast news day, you're going to be on the 5th page and get one paragraph.
Yep.
And that then is carried over into the media we have today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But also, in retrospect, though, it is part of this culture too. But you and I also grew up a time, and you told me about that show Vietnam that's on, and I got into that. But
that's awesome. Awesome. If you get a chance to see Ken Burns' Vietnam, I want our viewers to hear it. Do not miss it. It's one of those, really. That's what I found myself doing throughout the program, Rick, was going, really? I was alive during that time. I watched that stuff, and I missed that. A lot of information that I just missed.
Well, missed it, but also a lot of that is, I think, is relative to really how much is also controlled as to what, much more in Vietnam War, the information that was coming out, because yes, they would do the body counts every morning and they would talk about what the war was going on, but once again, I think there was a lot of control over the news that was coming out there and actually the war did not turn until it was Walter Cronkite who went over there and saw everything, and he's the one that came back, and that was the most trusted man in America at the time,
right? Who
said, "I don't think this war is worth fighting for." And then the tide turned in America. Your sister has joined us and said, we would drive ourselves crazy trying to find out the answer to those who are mentally ill. They are masters and not.
That's right, Gail.
And that that's true. I think when we think of mental illness, we think of maybe one flew over
the cuckoo's nest
type.
Yeah.
But right, those with mental illnesses also are they've learned to cope. Kind of, when I say cope, they learn to hide a lot of times until that one thing breaks. And again, that's a big umbrella, and I don't want to be stereotypical and anything, but that's a good point. Is a lot of times, unfortunately, I did see some of the interviews of people who knew this guy, and it's the same thing. I would never have known, that he was.
Right. We have put a lot of weight, Rick, on signs.
Mm-hmm.
That there were signs that said this would happen, that would happen. And with this one, his own family was saying there really weren't any signs. And if people come up with signs, That's fine, but they're guessing. That's what I'm saying. They're guessing. They're saying, well, he came from this, but they don't know. And I just knew this time was going to come. I knew there was a group that, well, this is what they believed, and this is what they posted, and this is the group they were with. So we could answer on some level of why, and it gave us comfort. But boy, this one is less comforting because people are asking why, and they're guessing. They don't have a clue. There was no affiliation, and it seemed like this guy was moving along. Mr. Average American snapped and blew up and took everybody he could take.
Yeah, the only thing about the snapping part to me was there had to be some preparation. I mean, you don't pack up that many guns, that much ammo, without knowing what you're going to do with it. I understand what you're saying about the snapping.
Well, I think the snapping was when he started buying guns.
Right, okay.
I think it was long ago. I don't think it was in Vegas
No.
on that day. I mean, I think that was the noticeable, but they found 19 guns in the guy's house. Well, when he bought the first one, before he made that buy, Rick, there was the snap.
Okay.
There was the snap. And people they want answers. They want sureties. They want the answer to why. And I think this one is going to be made up. I don't think that they're going to necessarily know why. I think they're just going to come back to the fact that he was not well. That's like, why do people get cancer? Well, we don't really know. Oh, why did Tom Petty just died?
Yeah.
It's these kind of things that there comes a time and things happen, and it's not possible to get a definitive answer. I think that's very difficult for people.
Yeah.
And Vegas is a great example of that, I think.
And Kim's talking about, the world we live in today, about just we're treating everybody with pharmacology and not so much working with people and helping them.
Good marketing, Kim.
Yeah.
Hey, so come up with a pill, and I love. I've got to jump in here, Rick. Where did medication for mental illness come from? And the answer is it came from cattle. That's where it came from. They gave cattle medication that was supposed to run flies off of it. That's the original mental illness medication. It was a cattle medication, and they found that when they gave it to certain people, it made them docile and more manageable. And and money. Then what somebody saw was cha-ching. But it wasn't that they were researching mental illness and came up with pharmacology directly around mental illness. No, they were trying to keep flies off cattle. And then they gave it to human beings, and it made them docile. Woohoo! And more money was to be made off of making human beings docile than to making cows less fly connected.
And isn't that always interesting? Because after your stroke, did they put you on warfarin or Coumadin?
Yeah, I've taken so much medication, it didn't even fuck.
But what I'm asking, that's a blood thinner, but again, that's rat poison. And again,
yeah, there we go.
Who is here thinking?
All right, there. I've been taking rat poison.
This will get rid of flies off cows. Let's see what it does to a person.
That's the way they were operating.
And it's rat poison.
It was let's try this. And if they find a way, number one, that it produces something that helps, and they can monetize it. Now, if they couldn't have monetized it, you think we'd be taking that kind of medication? No. And we're seeing that, Rick, today with opioids. That was doctors were prescribing that, dentists were prescribing that by the thousands. There wasn't any problem, and it was making people lots of money, and nobody said a thing. But then the wave came, and thousands, literally thousands and thousands of people died. And now it's an issue. Now we need to correct it. We've already rung the bell, but now we want to try to unring the bell.
I remember hearing one doctor being interviewed. I forget which media it was, but he was saying that when they started coming out with the opioids, that they were being marketed as they were proven to be non-addictive, and so the doctors were listening to what. Well, I can't say the doctor. This doctor specifically, felt comfortable that because the company that was selling that specific one was selling it as non-addictive, and
well, wait a minute. You don't want to sell something that has a flaw. You don't want to sell the flaw because you won't make the sale. Well, let me tell you this, but here's the problem with it. Well, nobody's going to buy it. No, you don't bring up the flaw. You don't admit the flaw. And that's how you sell it. So, if you think the doctors are concerned about the addictive quality of something, well, you keep your mouth shut about it. Because what happens? That puts money in your pocket. I mean, America, I feel, is in dire shape because of money. Money is the core of where people would do anything, like I said, serve you rat poisoning, to help do something. Well, it's rat poison, big deal. If I sell, a prescription of it, I make money, and the doctors are happy because their patients are happy, and I'm happy because, and it's all about the dollar bill.
And that's where Kevin was saying, go back and really, what are we doing for the mental health? Last year or year before, Cheryl and I were able to go to a summit down at, in fact, it was Seacoast Church in Mount Pleasant, but the churches are now trying to align themselves with the concept of mental health, and that mental health is an issue that the churches have to face now, and we all face it. But are we helping people? And we're not talking about mental illness. We're just talking about mental health. We're talking about the stresses of life. We're talking about the depressions. We're talking about the anxieties. We're talking about what life can do without the right coping mechanisms. And Ken, that's a good point, is, what are we really doing in the world to help people cope? And again, not to be hard on the doctors per se, but I know for them it's also, well, I know realistically, and the few doctors I've spoken to, that sometimes they have to get prescriptions only because the patient feels like they haven't got their money's worth. If you go to the doctor and says, I'm being really stressed out at work, and if the doctor says, well, have you thought about exercising? That's a good de-stressor. Well, no, that won't work for me. Have you thought? No, what I need is an anti-anxiety medicine. and so,
wait a minute. It's the seeking of the cure is dangerous. That people seek a cure which is not available at any cost.
Or it's a quick, right? Or as Kim said, is the quick fix, thinking that that'll do it.
And the quick fix is a cure idea.
Yeah.
A quick fix means it's gone, and what am I willing to pay for gone? And boy, people have figured out. People will go in their pocket for the illusion of cure. They will go in their pocket for the illusion of cure. And I think churches getting involved can be a good thing if what they're helping people with is how better to relate.
Right.
I think part of what we're seeing out there is people are isolating and thinking that they're safe. And, that's not right. People isolate and they get weirder. They don't get better, they get sicker. They remove themselves from relating, and the healthier people are the people who know properly how to relate, and they're in with healthy people that they relate to.
Well,
and that makes a big difference, I think.
And again, that was one of the major themes last week, is in the challenge of churches to help people who are challenged with relationships and or loneliness, because it was brought up that loneliness is going to be the next major epidemic in this country.
Amen. Amen.
It's going to be no different than heart disease or cancer or any other causes of death. And again, have gotten the statistics showing that loneliness is a major life reducer as far as the extension of life. And we have a lot of lonely people out there. So.
Yeah, and now we're I'm thinking back to Vegas. I think people do weird stuff in isolation. I do not find people doing that weird of stuff when they're connected to a healthy group. People who are connected to a healthy group function better. They operate in a healthier way. But when people start getting weird, they remove themselves because they can see where people are like, well, now we don't know about that, and we're not going to get behind that. So they isolate themselves. They move away. They become in their own selves. How many stories have we heard about? Well, they were in their room and for months, and they were ruminating about stuff for months, and what they came up with was dangerous, and they had nobody to counter it with, and they went out and did crazy stuff. And to them, they were saying, well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Well, the only person that had to make sense was to themselves and their disturbed mind.
And Kim, you're right. Kim's saying, obviously, the baby boomers, as we start as our mate starts losing us or we start losing the mates, meaning spouses, that's a kind of loneliness that is. And you and I have both seen people that have gotten into their 70s or 80s and they will lose their spouse, and it won't be 3 months later they pass on. And I do think there is such a thing as a broken heart.
Oh, without a doubt. I always call that the Bear Bryant syndrome. Here's Bear Bryant, who coached the University of Alabama, hugely successful, hugely powerful. Stop coaching, boom. Right after that, he's dead. Wait a minute. Anybody going, say, what? And I think that happens on a smaller scale with just couples that are used to, that they don't have any other relationship but the person they're married to with. So that then when they lose that person, they don't have anybody.
Or if they're in social relationships with their spouse, then it becomes awkward. What do we do with this person when couples are doing things and all the social activities have been revolved around the couple, and it's awkward also then for those that are in that individual's social circles is what do we do now?
Yeah, and the importance of getting assimilated. That's part of what we're talking about here, Rick, is that people lose their spouse and they're never assimilated. They're isolated. Mm-hmm. And then we're thinking, well, they'll do okay. No, they won't. They're not going to get better. They're going to get worse. And for many people, that's a shock to their system, and they're gone 2-3 days later. Back in the day, so to speak, people would be married. If their spouse died, you looked at the watch because you knew the other person was going soon.
Yeah. And let's see. Kim's got another good idea. We should make opioids smell, taste, and look gross. Would it be enough to offset the pleasure senses in our brain? As I understand, I think no matter what the initial smell, taste, or look would look like, it will still do the same thing. It will still react or affect that part of the brain that does give it.
And I would just ask him, who in the pharmaceutical world would do such a thing? That's like saying, here, I can make 1,000 or I can lose 1,000. Oh, I'll choose to lose 1,000. Who in the world would do that, Kim? Nobody's going to do that. No, they're in the business of making money. It's the pharmaceutical business. So they're going to make it smell good, taste good, and number one, feel good.
Yeah.
And the consequences, they'll deal with later. And the only reason it's even being brought up as a subject is the consequences have risen sharply in a speedy way.
Yeah. And again, Kim's, he's coming up with solutions, but like you said, in the world of capitalism right now, the solutions aren't always going to be what's going to be accepted by the business.
Nobody's going to do that. Wait a minute. If you get in people's pockets, Rick, they're going to knock you out. I mean, if we look back in history, there were people back in the day with the automotive business who came up with a better way to make an automobile, a safer way to make an automobile. And man, people just ignored them and ran them out of business. They lost their livelihoods if they did that. Was that a good idea? Yeah. Was it a safe idea? Yeah. Was it a better idea? Yeah. But it wasn't a moneymaker, and so they were attacked and ruined because of that. That's how it works.
Yeah. And not only that, but again, we are of the age when we can remember our parents having appliances in the house that maybe we even inherited, that last 20 and 30 years. And guess what? These appliance companies figured it out. If we don't put an obsolescence component into our appliances,
planned obsolescence,
we don't have a business. We can't be making
something that lasts 30 years. We can't do that.
Yeah,
we got to
that
make
might
sure
need to be repaired once in a lifetime.
Yes.
And so now we see appliances last about 10, 12 years of that. And then guess what? They start breaking all down at the same time.
Right, and what happens in some of this is the insurance business. When it starts costing people more than they can make, then things will change. So if people find a way to make opioids cost society more, and I think we're coming to that with people dying and stuff, but if people see it costs them more to keep it going, I guarantee you they're going to find a way to pull back and make it less. And that's what we're seeing, is a kind of cause and effect. And it's just sad that it has to be that way. That we ought to be thinking of the best up front instead of trying to unring the bell after it's been rung.
So, and Kim say, capitalism versus ethics. And
really, there it is. Capitalism versus ethics. And the thing you ought to put between those two words, Cam, is cost. Cost is the needle mover to all that.
Trying to see your sister says something.
Oh no.
Okay.
I'm scared of what my sister might say.
She said the media wants a story now, and there's no now yet. And she's talking about Vegas.
Yeah, because if they could come up with what's the answer now, it would sell. And whoever comes up with that first knows they're going to get the viewers. So I love where she's going with that. That's it. That they weren't concerned about him being isolated. They weren't concerned about him stockpiling guns. The only person who knew about that was probably the person he lived with. That was it. One person. And he shipped her off to a different country. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see what that story is all about when she gets home, and how she was over in Asia, and obviously that had to be part of, because that's going back to, like I said, the isolation. Hopefully he would have known that if she saw him walk out of the house with a cache of guns and ammunition, she might have said, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Well, wait a minute. Again, Rick, it didn't happen in one day. Yeah. He didn't acquire all those guns in one day. And he had to bring them in. He couldn't hide them from someone he lived with day in and day out. Maybe the first day or second day, they might have missed it. But eventually, they're going to go, wow, these were big guns. These weren't like little, cards. They were huge military guns. And he had 19. Think of that. 19 guns. I'm trying to imagine in a home that has 19 guns. That takes up a lot of space. So she knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't just up and acquire. You and I don't sit around and say, hey, Rick, I think I'm going to go buy me an automatic weapon. Or I'm going to go buy a weapon and make it automatic. You'd be like, can you imagine me saying that to you, Rick?
Yep.
What would be your first response?
Yeah. Like, right, Roger.
What is going on?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a flare right there. What is going on, man? Roger has lost his mind. What's he doing? I mean, this wasn't, I want to go out and get a hunting rifle to go shoot deer. Oh, okay. But even that, Rick, Bob said, this is the 5th shooting rifle I'm going to buy. You would go, 5th?
Yeah.
And this is 19, and they're military grade guns. Woo-wee, buddy. But see, only one person.
Yeah.
And they were shipped off. And probably what we're going to hear from them is, I couldn't say anything. It was my life. Well, there it is. But if he'd had a bunch of people coming in and out and a relationship with many people, I find it hard to believe he could have maintained this level without somebody calling the police and saying, I think you need to go over his house.
Yep.
Check this stuff out.
Yep. And hopefully, but again, we're also learning that we're living in a world that people, as we talk about isolation, that people also are not doing that kind of reporting sometimes because they just prefer not to get involved in another person's quote-unquote business, and they're afraid of what people will be thinking if they do something like that. And I want to segue back a little bit on the pharmacology too, and mental health in the brain, because the other challenge we have is if it's prescribed by a doctor, then the thought process, well, it must be okay for me.
Safe.
Yeah.
It must be safe.
But we go back and we start seeing these studies on Ambien and Halcyon and some of the anti-anxiety drugs, and that is starting to cause that there's a causal effect of early dementia or Alzheimer's being brought on by these medicines. And something as simple as Tylenol. Acetaminophen, we know that it is rough on the liver, and people that take handfuls of acetaminophen and then end up with cirrhosis of the liver or something are surprised. Well, I bought it at CVS, so I thought it was okay.
But we don't, yeah. Well, and that's one thing I think has changed and is changing. I think when we were little, if the doctor gave it to you, you believed it was safe and they knew what they were doing. And I think now we've moved to where we question everything, and say, wait a minute, what is the cost? I find my children are greater questioning of products. What is in this product? What will this product do? What is the backside of this product? And I love that. And I'm sorry that we didn't know that, but we didn't know any better. We were taught, if they said it, it was the gospel.
Yeah, prescribe it. Said or prescribe it. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's the bill, yeah. And I have to watch that I don't get in there now, because I was raised in that culture, and I just will, blindly take stuff. But it's good that I have people around me who go, I don't know about that. I don't know that you should take that. Have you questioned that? And so that's helpful. That gives me permission. That gives me support to be able to question what I'm putting in me. And I think that's safer for me.
Yeah, and also the ability to question alternatives. If there may be alternatives out there that are either less expensive or have a
less damaging.
Have a better record of safety to it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying, neither one of us can sit here and say that there aren't going to be needs for times of pharmacology, but yeah, do we become a sophisticated consumer of it, or are we just taking whatever the sales rep for that pharmacology company is telling the doctors is the hottest thing this week?
Well, I think you have to, kind of like what Ken was saying, you have to move away from business. You have to move it away from the dollar bill. Because when people can make, I've just been amazed at what people will do for money. It's like, wow, it's scary what people will do to make an extra dollar. And what I thought growing up was people would never sacrifice other human beings to make a dollar. And boy, have I been proven untrue on that one. Wow. People are willing for you to get cancer. People are willing for you to have every kind of major disease in the world. Don't matter. They got a dollar. They got a house by the lake. And that's what and so it ruined your family. Well, it wasn't my family. It's just been very sad, the domino effect of the dollar bill on business. And I think pharmacology would change greatly if they took it out of the dollar bill symbol. If they put it into what is the positive and negative, what's the health and the unhealth of it. I think, number one, half of pharmacology would just go away. You wouldn't have it. It's all about the dollar bill. And what we put in ourselves would have a better effect if that was the case. I mean, that's my personal view.
No, I think it's a legitimate view. I mean, I'm not that far off. I've always been of the opinion that the national defense and healthcare, and of course, this is always going to be a big issue. But again, just knowing what I've seen, and sometimes a personal experience as to what families go through, even when they have insurance, but the cost and what they have to take upon themselves to treat. I have no idea, what it would have been for your visit in the hospital.
Let me help you, Rick. Too much.
Yeah.
Too much. It's just like you do your best to behave and do right and to be productive, but one illness can take everything, every penny, every piece of property, everything you got. And they don't mind prescribing your financial ruin. Right. That don't bother them a bit.
And that's it. And that's the point. Is without even talking about raising taxes or increasing premiums. And do I have the definitive numbers in front of me? But no. But I have a feeling that where we spend trillions of dollars out of our government budget. Now I'm getting political on this, but that we could.
Oh no,
we could provide decent health care for every citizen of this country. And yeah, maybe some country that we don't even know how to pronounce the name may have to go without $1 billion next year or something. But,
yeah.
But I don't know. But like I said, yeah, I'm frustrated. I will admit that does get me frustrated.
Well, again, it's about cost. We have awesome medical facilities and structure, but at a cost. It's a money-making machine, and that's why it works. If they can find a way of supporting people and having great medicine, that's what's going to work.
Yeah.
But we've weaned people off the best based on the dollar bill.
Yeah. And Kevin saying that he talked to a pharmacy rep who told him that here in South Carolina we are Mecca because of our medical facilities, our education, the poor eating habits, our physical wellness, or I guess lack of physical wellness. So we're kind of asking for it, and there's a lot of truth to that too. I mean, we have to accept the responsibility for some of the issues we get into sometimes, but there are times you don't do it. But I can see how South Carolina would be a prime ground for pharmaceuticals and the medicine and so forth. But yeah, so like I said, I don't have many rants in life, but the one where we are still challenged in this country to have to make a decision, between filing bankruptcy or getting medical
or staying alive.
Staying alive, yeah.
Yeah,
That's really what it is, yeah, sometimes.
And you get to a place where the phrase is, you can afford to be seriously ill. You can't afford to, and we act as if you're just going to live well forever. And that's just not the truth. I was not overweight. I did not have a history of illness. And I mean, in a microsecond, I was in the hospital with a stroke. What? Where'd that go? It came out of nowhere. There was no warning signs, and I wasn't 300 pounds eating barbecue in the backyard. No, that wasn't the case. But at some point, your body is going to give out.
Mm-hmm.
And when people can make money on you being sick, woo, buddy, at some point, come on, sickness is what they're saying. That's my salary there. That's my lake home there. So it's a tough situation out there, and and it's interesting. Again, it's another one of trying to unring a bell. People ate poorly because that was all that was available. They didn't have this health food and all this even available. That wasn't, if they would have thought of it and wanted it, it was not available. But people were just surviving. So they ate what they could, what was growable, what was, consumable. And they made it to where it tasted good. And that's what we're trying to unring the bell from, of a survival eating to choicing. And it's easy to look down on the South when the South was farmers and dirt poor.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Well, and NPR in the morning sometimes has stories about those that grew up in South Carolina and North Carolina and the South. And you're right. It wasn't a choice of they had all this healthy organic food because they lived on a farm. No, many times they tell stories of having to eat just mac and cheese because that's all they could afford.
All they could afford. And you had to go out and, even in the Gone with the Wind, Scarlett pulling up the turnips from the ground and saying, I'll never go hungry again. Well, there we go. That's the way it was, and even the people who had wealth during the time did not have the choice of healthy. They had the available. They could just get more of the available, and if you were poor, you got less of the available.
And then, in fact, I was telling my class yesterday about that little scene. Do you remember that movie that came out that's called The End of the Spear, about the missionaries that went down to the rainforest?
Oh, yeah.
And the men who first flew down there were killed by the tribe, but then one of the wives decided she was going to continue the mission of her husband. And so she went down there and actually made a relationship with this tribe, and they became friendly, and to the point where one of the members of the tribe actually came back to America with her and spent some time here. But then when he went back home, the first thing his wife does is start chastising him because he got fat, and he's trying to explain to her, yeah, but in America, they have these little houses where you drive through and they hand you food out the window.
Really? Yeah. I mean, we're creating so many of our own problems, and that's tough. It's tough. And before we get off the porch today, I wanted to ask you. I know you just went to the conference in Nashville, and I wanted to what was the wisdom of that group in Nashville that you were a part of?
Well, the wisdom was, first of all, the group was the American Association of Christian Counselors, which has a world conference every 2 years in Nashville. And it brings about 7,000 Christian counselors from all over the world into this location to receive additional training, to hear some of the leaders in the Christian counseling movement, what some thoughts, theories are. Like I said, Dr. Min was there on his work, Dr. Pan. Ruth Graham Watts was there, Sue Johnson with the EFT, the emotional focused therapy talk, and just kind of hearing what's going on right now. And so it does combine both the theological and the clinical perspective of treating your clients or treating people, and what's going on, the discussion, the continued discussion of mental health at church, and how do we bring the two theories together and recognize that mental health is a legitimate issue and the church has to be a legitimate platform to address it. So it's an exhausting week, but it's also an exhilarating week, and just the information you come back with. It's a good networking opportunity. We've got some very interesting people out there who hopefully we'll maintain relationships with, and we'll see again in 2 years. There's a lot of academia out there, so get to meet with them. So anyway, it's always a great time, great week. A lot of the wisdom theories that are coming back are just that the importance. They spend a lot of time talking about the importance of relationships.
Awesome. I honestly, personally feel that is a pivotal issue for the future of churches.
Yeah.
Is the building and the defining of healthy relationships. And
it has got to be one of their cornerstones that the church is going to continue to grow on. The health of the brain was a lot. I went to a lot of sessions on attachment theory, and recognizing that, sometimes before you start even dealing with the baselines of the consultative process with couples and so forth, we have to dig deeper and get into the emotional ones and what are their attachment theories, and again, the proof they have on how these attachment theories work. And, if we're not addressing these, and we're really trying to address some of the marital challenges we have, and then the health of the brain, and talking about simple things like antihistamines. Antihistamines now, the old antihistamine, whatever's the Benadryl, we now have scientific evidence that's a precursor to dementia and Alzheimer's. And so what are we doing to take care of our brain? And again, going back to common sense, are we eating healthy? Are we taking the right supplements? Are we getting enough of the vitamins? So apparently America has a diet that is very lacking on a lot of the essential nutrients we need for healthy brains. The fatty, the omega-3s and so forth. So thanks for asking, but yeah, it was very interesting and got a lot out of it, and now it's just synthesizing all this into how do I apply it now with my clients in my practice. So I'm kind of hopefully working on some of the top proven theories and ideas out there in the realm of the combination of theology and the clinical side of counseling.
And you said to me before we started the show, a powerful networking moment too.
Yeah. You get an opportunity to meet some of the again top theorists in the different fields in Christian counseling, and they're all very accessible, very approachable. I'm a big fan of Dr. Tim Jennings out of Chattanooga. Dr. Jennings, he again has a psychiatric practice where he combines again theology and the clinician side of it and pharmacology and so forth. But I followed his work a lot, and how we are who we are, and again, I had a good discussion with him, and so overall it's really that simple. You'd be surprised sometimes with who you bump into just walking down the halls, and before Gary Chapman died, he was a participant in this, and one time I was just walking, and there he was, and just talked to him for a while. And
that's the one thing I think people find it hard to grab, is that some of the top people in the field, if you get in the right environment, are incredibly approachable. They're just they put their pants on the same way, and they are just even though they come up with this great theory and this great direction, they drink coffee and you drink coffee too, and so they'll sit and converse with you and develop a relationship, and great things come out of that. And all through my career, I met some of the cutting edge people in the field, and they were the most regular people, and they weren't high and mighty, and they were not don't touch me. They were, how's it going? What's going on? They were just conversing on a just regular level, which gave me a lot of hope and a lot of security in the fact of these people aren't walking on water. They've just come up with a good idea. And that's one of the things I hear out of this organization meeting that you had, that you could, in the past and even today, walk by, see somebody that may be on TV, may have a great audience, but they were regular people.
You know what? Years ago, and again, that's exactly it. We were at one of these meetings, and Dr. Daniel Amin, if people are not familiar with it, he is one of the leading researchers on brain scan imaging, and again, his theories. I want to say he said he has 137,000 brain scans now that they've done, and his theory is, of course, that by looking at the brain, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Psychiatry is always a very interesting field because you go in and you don't get blood drawn, you don't have anything that does say, let's try this or let's try that. And again, it's not critiquing psychiatry per se because we don't have those opportunities. Mental health is a little bit of a different challenge sometimes. I mean, we can't but anyway, he says, his theory is, let's lift the brain first, because we know now through the science we can lift the brain and get a pretty good idea as to what's going on or which regions are firing, which regions are not firing, what part of the brain, we know what parts create depression, what parts create anxiety, and if these aren't operating right, then we also know what to do. And again, it's not always pharmacology, it's the right supplements and so forth. But where I was going with this, and then one year, Cheryl and I were at one of these, I think it was a regional one, and we ended up having lunch with him, Tim Clinton, Ron Hawkins from Liberty University, and it was just
having a meal, breaking bread,
yeah.
Being regular people. We've lost sight of that. Be somebody. No, somebodies are regular people. That you meet them and they treat you regular and you treat them regular, and that in and of itself is a magic moment.
And then Kim said that he's 90% of the psychiatrist issues are the spiritual basis. Interesting start, and again that's the balance I think we're looking for. Is we do have to address the spiritual components. I don't think if we're going to be treating people holistically, we have to treat the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical side of it, and understanding what they came from. Because again, Kim, and I forgot you made a statement which was true about wanting medicine.
Well, everything I say is true, Rick. Come on, don't put doubt in our viewers' mind that I might not say something untrue.
No. Yeah, I should say agreement. But I'm in agreement with.
Oh, there we go.
Because we've also seen the studies of people who have had the placebos, but thinking that they were getting medicine, and the curative rate of these type of individuals too. And so combining that with the spiritual side is, I guess, kind of just a hope that prayer does work.
Yes.
But again, there's been studies done that has shown when someone knows they're being prayed over, how much quicker they recover.
It's incredible. But the problem is, as we close out the day on the porch, is there's no money in prayer.
Right.
Yeah. Well, prayer would be a big deal if we found a way to make money off of it.
Actually, on Tulsa back, I guess it would have been in the late mid-'80s or late 70s, mid-'80s, and anybody who watched from Tulsa can comment later, but they built a hospital called the City of Faith, which was built just on that there was going to be prayer involved in all aspects of the medical practices over there. And I had an uncle who was a neurosurgeon who was part of that over there. And I remember talking about it. But again, the sad thing was, though, it was not a moneymaker. So,
but bing.
So they closed,
not a money.
So you had this beautiful facility that closed down. I think I don't know. I want to say it was like a 12, 14-story building.
Yeah, I remember.
And only 4 or 5 stories were ever actually, floors were actually used and going there.
But boy, if you can figure a way to make money, it's no wonder that Silicon Valley has big buildings, lots of people in it, because there's lots of money to be made.
And so, so again, we've done it.
The porch is done.
Another one in the books, but it's a good one. We've covered a lot of topics. I don't know what problems in the world we solved. Probably none.
That's not what being on the porch is about. Being on the porch is about showing up and being real.
And I'm glad you said that too, because that's exactly it. That was the focus from day one, and it was just to do this, just process life. We're not going to solve any of life problems, but just talk about it and get some people thinking, get ourselves thinking. I always think every time we finish one of these, I get a lot of thoughts going on about different things. So hopefully that's what we've accomplished. And we will see everybody again next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
10 a.m.
Be there. Be square.
Eastern.